else on Earth slowly consume whatever sinks to the seafloor. Down there in the cold and the permanent dark, a wooden ship that went down 2,000 years ago does not rot away to nothing. It stays. The hull, the mast, the carvings, the coils of rope, all of it preserved almost exactly as it was on the day the water closed over it. This is the Black Sea. On its surface, it has drowned countless ships across 3,000 years of storms and war. And in its lifeless depths, it has kept them turning itself into the greatest graveyard of intact ancient ships anywhere in the world. It is a sea that kills like any other and preserves like no other. This is the story of the violent surface that sinks the ships, the dead water that keeps them, and the secrets that have been waiting in the dark for thousands of years. To understand why the Black Sea is so strange, the first thing to understand is that it is almost completely sealed off from the rest of the world's oceans. It is a vast body of water, larger than many seas, bordered by 6 countries from Turkey in the south, around to Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, and Georgia. But it connects to the wider ocean through only one narrow doorway, a single strait less than a mile wide at its narrowest, threading through the city of Istanbul, linking the Black Sea to the Mediterranean far beyond. Into this near enclosed basin pour some of the largest rivers in Europe, the Danube, the Dnieper, the Don, and more, draining a huge swath of the continent into a single body of water and flooding it with enormous volumes of fresh water. That combination, great rivers pouring in, and only one tiny outlet creates something found almost nowhere else on such a scale. The water settles into 2 distinct layers that refuse to mix. On top floats a lighter layer freshened by the rivers, carrying oxygen down from the surface. And beneath it lies a heavier layer of dense salty water that crept in long ago along the bottom of the strait. Because the light layer never sinks and the heavy layer never rises the surface, and the depths stay permanently separated, sealed off from one another as if by an invisible lid. That divide runs right through the narrow strait as well. There, the 2 worlds pass each other in opposite directions. A brackish surface current flows outward toward the Mediterranean, while far beneath it, a hidden undercurrent of dense, salty water slides the other way, pouring back down into the deep. It is one of the few places on Earth where 2 rivers of seawater run past one another at the same time, one stacked directly above the other. And the divide has a profound consequence. Oxygen from the air and the rivers reaches only the upper layer. It cannot get down to the deep. So, below a few hundred feet, the water of the Black Sea contains no oxygen at all, and instead is saturated with hydrogen sulfide, a toxic gas. Around 90% of the entire volume of the Black Sea is a permanent dead zone, the largest body of oxygen-free water on the face of the Earth. A sea with a thin living skin stretched over an enormous lifeless deep that plunges more than a mile down. The hydrogen sulfide that fills that deep is the same gas that gives rotten eggs their stench, and in such quantities, it is lethal. It is one of the reasons the deep Black Sea is often described, without exaggeration, as a poisoned world, a place hostile to nearly every form of life that exists. Nothing that needs oxygen can survive in that deep, and that turns out to matter enormously because of what it does to the things that sink into it. Everywhere else in the ocean, a shipwreck is a temporary thing. When a wooden ship goes to the bottom of a normal sea, it is immediately set upon. Tiny organisms bore into the timber. Worms and bacteria consume the wood, the rope, the sails. Within years or decades, a wooden vessel is reduced to a scatter of hardware on the seafloor, its hull eaten away to almost nothing. The sea does not keep its ships, it digests them. But in the dead deep of the Black Sea, there is no oxygen, and so none of those wood-eating creatures can live. Below the oxygen line, the destroyers of shipwrecks simply do not exist. And that means a wooden ship that sinks into the Black Sea's depths is not consumed. It is preserved almost perfectly for as long as the darkness lasts. The results when scientists finally went looking were astonishing. In the last decade, a major scientific survey of the Black Sea floor set out to map the bottom in detail, originally to study how the sea's level had changed over thousands of years. Using ships equipped with sonar and remotely operated vehicles that could descend into water far too deep and too poisonous for any diver, the team scanned the seabed. And they found wreck after wreck after wreck, more than 60 of them, from across the whole sweep of history. Ottoman ships, Byzantine ships, ships from empires long since vanished, resting in the dark. Many of them so well preserved that the tool marks were still visible in the wood, the masts still standing, the rigging still in place. Some had gone down with their cargo, still aboard the jars and goods of long-dead merchants sitting in the holds exactly as they had been stowed. There is something deeply eerie about the footage those vehicles brought back. In water, this deep, there is no light at all, and no life to disturb the silence, no fish darting past the cameras, no coral or growth softening the wreck's edges. Just a ship appearing out of the total blackness, exactly as it looked when it sank, sometimes with a single anchor, still poised as though ready to drop. These are not the crumbling, coral-crusted wrecks of a tropical reef. They look less like ruins than like ghosts. And then they found the oldest of all. Lying more than a mile deep in the black and oxygen-free water was a Greek merchant ship that had sunk around 2,400 years ago, some 24 centuries in the past. It was almost completely intact. Its mast still stood. Its rudders and its rowing benches were still where they had been when it went down in the age of the ancient Greeks. It was the oldest intact shipwreck ever discovered anywhere in the world, a vessel that had sat undisturbed and undecayed on the bottom of the Black Sea since before the Roman Empire even existed. To an archaeologist, this is almost beyond price. In most of the world, the ancient past at the bottom of the sea has long since rotted away, leaving only stone, metal, and pottery, the hard fragments that happen to survive. Wood, cloth, rope, the everyday objects that reveal how people actually lived and sailed are almost always gone forever. In the Black Sea's dead deep, they are not. The ships come up as near complete objects, not ruins, but vessels frozen in the moment of their sinking. Each one is a page from a book that anywhere else would have been destroyed centuries ago. This is what makes the Black Sea unlike any other water on Earth. It is not merely a graveyard. It is a museum, a vast silent gallery of perfectly preserved ships spanning thousands of years, kept in the dark by the very deadness of the water. But every one of those ships got there the same way. Something on the surface killed it first. For 3,000 years, the Black Sea has been one of the busiest and most fought-over stretches of water in the world. Its shores were ringed with ancient Greek trading colonies. Grain from its northern plains fed distant cities across the ancient world. Empire after empire, Greek, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, Russian, rose and struggled around it because whoever controlled the Black Sea controlled a crossroads between Europe and Asia and a highway for both trade and war. For millennia, its surface was crowded with merchant ships and warships alike, and all of them were exposed to the same danger. Because the Black Sea, for all that its depths lie, still has a genuinely violent surface. It is capable of sudden ferocious storms, particularly in autumn and winter, when powerful weather systems sweep in and whip the enclosed water into steep, punishing seas with very little warning. Thick fog can blind a crew in moments, and its shape, a broad basin with long, exposed stretches of coast, has often left ships with nowhere to run when the weather turned. Its fearsome reputation among sailors is ancient, and the name it carries has long been bound up with dark water and darker storms. One of those storms changed history. In the autumn of 1854, during the Crimean War, a ferocious storm tore across the Black Sea and fell upon the fleet of ships supplying the armies fighting on its shores. In a matter of hours, it wrecked or sank around 30 vessels, and it sent one great supply steamer to the bottom, carrying much of an army's winter provisions, the clothing, food, and equipment that the soldiers ashore were depending on to survive the coming cold. The disaster was so severe and so costly that it pushed European governments to ask a new question. Could a storm like this have been seen coming in advance? The effort to answer it helped give rise to the first organized system of storm warnings, the distant ancestor of the modern weather forecast. The Black Sea had destroyed a fleet, and in doing so, helped teach the world to predict the weather. That was a single storm in a single war. Multiply it across 3,000 years of trade and conflict, and the scale of what lies below becomes clear. Trading fleets caught and scattered, war fleets wrecked by weather as surely as by their enemies. Ship after ship, empire after empire, the Black Sea took its dead from the surface and then carried them down quietly into the one place on Earth where they would never be allowed to decay. The wrecks the scientists have found so far are the tiniest fraction of what must be waiting in the dark. Most of those ships were never recorded at all. They sailed out into a storm and simply never came back their names, and their crews lost to history, remembered now only by the sea that is still holding them. But the ships may not be the oldest thing the sea is hiding. There is a theory about the Black Sea that, if it is true, makes its dark deep stranger still. Long ago, according to this idea, the Black Sea was not a sea at all. It was a freshwater lake smaller than the sea of today, its shoreline lying far below the present coast. Beyond it, the Mediterranean sat higher, held back only by the land of the narrow strait. And then, more than 7,000 years ago, that barrier gave way. The Mediterranean broke through and came roaring in a torrent of seawater, flooding into the basin, raising the water level with terrible speed, and drowning the old freshwater shoreline, swallowing perhaps the very coasts where people had once lived and farmed. Some scientists believe this catastrophic flood may lie behind the ancient flood legends that echo through the region's oldest stories, tales of a great deluge that predate written history. And when explorers went looking for evidence, they found support for the idea submerged ancient shorelines lying far below the modern coast, and in places what appeared to be the remains of human structures out on that drowned land. The theory is debated and far from settled, but it carries a haunting implication. If people lived along the shores of that vanished lake, then their drowned world now lies somewhere out under the Black Sea, and in the oxygen-free deep, the traces of it could be preserved as faithfully as the ships. It means the darkness of the Black Sea may be keeping not only the wrecks of recorded history, but the remains of a world that existed before history began. Whatever waits down there has waited a very long time in perfect stillness. On the surface, though, the Black Sea has become dangerous all over again, and in an entirely modern way. Today, the Black Sea is once more a sea at war. Since 2022, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has turned its northern waters into a battleground, and in doing so, has added a new and deadly hazard to a sea already full of them. Both sides have used naval mines, and a large number of those mines have broken loose and begun to drift. Carried by the sea's currents, they have floated far from where they were laid, washing ashore or exploding along the coasts of countries hundreds of miles away, from Turkey to Romania to Bulgaria. Reconnaissance aircraft have spotted well over 100 mines adrift in the sea. Ships have struck them, and official warnings to merchant shipping have remained in force as recently as 2026, cautioning that the waters may still hold both moored and drifting explosives with no reliable way to know exactly where they are. Keeping the sea lanes clear has become a matter of consequence for the whole world, because these are the waters through which enormous quantities of grain reach global markets. And the mines are not the only wound the war has opened. When a major dam upstream was destroyed, the floodwaters swept displaced landmines along with vast amounts of debris and pollution down into the sea. Marine life has suffered badly. By some counts, more than 1,000 dolphins are believed to have died. 3 of the nations bordering the sea have joined forces specifically to hunt for and destroy the drifting mines, a slow and dangerous task that experts warn will take years. It is a danger that will outlast the war itself. An unknown number of mines are somewhere in the water, their positions uncertain, even to the forces that laid them, and clearing an entire sea of them is the work of a generation. The Black Sea, that once carried grain and trade in peace, has become on its surface one of the most closely watched and heavily worn bodies of water in the world. And beneath all of it, the dead deep goes on, doing what it has always done. The wrecks of this modern war, like every ship the sea has ever taken, will in time settle toward the bottom into the same lifeless, oxygen-free dark that has preserved the ships of the ancient Greeks for 24 centuries. The archaeology continues too. The Black Sea still holds an unknown number of intact wrecks waiting in the black water to be found, a record of 3,000 years of history that the sea has simply refused to let rot. The Black Sea is in the end a single machine with 2 halves. On top is the killer, a violent storm-swept surface that has drowned ships for 3,000 years, that wrecked a war fleet in a single night, and that is once again strewn with the hazards of a modern conflict. Below is the keeper, a vast, dead, oxygen-free, deep, the largest lifeless body of water on Earth, where nothing rots and nothing decays, and where the drowned are held exactly as they were for as long as the darkness lasts. two halves depend on each other. Without the killing surface, there would be no ships to keep. Without the dead deep, there would be nothing left of them to find. Together, they have turned a single sea into something no other water on Earth can match. Somewhere in that darkness tonight, the Greek merchant ship still stands upright on the bottom, its mast reaching up into water that has not changed in 24 centuries. Around it, unseen lie the ships of a dozen fallen empires and perhaps the shoreline of a world that drowned before writing existed. Above them, all the storms still gather, the mines still drift, and the sea goes on being what it has always been. A sea that takes ships from the world above and keeps them perfectly in the dead world, below an archive of everything it has ever swallowed, written in the dark and waiting to be read. More of the world's deadliest waters and the ships they kept in the films that follow.